crap.
Well, howdy, folks. Welcome back to What's in Tegan's Storage Locker, the show that dares to ask the question, what is in my storage locker? The answer today, as on most days, is comic books. I bought a lot of comic books when I was young. My parents gave me a fairly generous allowance, and I was pretty single-minded, so I have a lot of comic books. And I didn't always take the best care of them, so they need to be put in bags and boards and sorted and this and that and the other thing. So why not do it for the pleasure of a viewing audience? Say aye. Oh, so atop of the stack today we have a few issues of Alf. I can promise you I'm going to stop to look at Alf whenever we come across it, because it was for a time my very favorite comic book. I would say before it's a Marvel book, and that probably helped me getting into Marvel more heavily, because I really liked Alf for the first couple of years. It was maybe my favorite comic book before other than like Carl Barks, because I was already buying Carl Barks and in Gladstone at that point. But in terms of non-Carl Barks, which is in its own category. I like the Transformers, but it was never my favorite comic book. I was disappointed. And, I say this knowing that I read it every month, cover to cover, so many times that the covers fell off. But with that said, I was always a little bit disappointed in it. The stories never quite seemed to go anywhere, and I wasn't quite sure. Like, there was a whole sequence with a car wash. Like, come on, man. I was like 6 or 7 years old. I didn't have patience for the car wash of doom. I just didn't. I'm sorry. You know what I wish they'd done? The one, okay, I'm getting off on the Transformers. I'll just go on Alf. Anyway, point being, I was a kid. I had a kid's preference in comic books. So the period right before the period before I started reading superhero comic books heavily, I was just desperate to find any comic book to read. I was buying Now's Real Ghostbusters line, like that. That is some hard hours. But Alf was pretty good, and I'm glad that I liked Alf, because I can look back and say, oh yeah, Mary Severin inked and colored, didn't color, but inked every story of every Alf issue, every issue of Alf there was. Dave Manick, who was, as I mentioned, was an editor for, I think he was a DC editor for a while, and his cartooning work showed up in some of the DC. I ran across one of his horror, comedy horror strips the other day in an issue of, House of Mystery, or I forget, I was looking through them. Let's see, so this was issue. They all had fun covers. They put a lot of effort into their covers, and that's one reason why they probably sold pretty well. Because that's memorable. A small modicum of thought was put into that. They could have just had a picture of Alf chasing a cat on every issue. Oh man, this one obviously got a little bit of, this was February 1990. I knew what I was doing better than that by 1990. I was just very lazy, always very lazy with my comic book. I loaned them out to everyone who wanted to read them. I thought they were meant to be read. A couple of them came back a little bit more well-loved than they should have, but, we're talking about friends here. Yeah, Gallagher, Mannix, Severin. I think, I'm trying to remember. I can't even remember if there was ever even, Fred Hembeck or anyone. I think this was kind of a closed shop. Same team every issue. And, star signals, because technically speaking, even though it's Marvel on the cover, Star was the line. And I think they stopped putting Star on the cover. I mean, it makes, if they stopped putting Star on the cover, it's because Marvel on the cover was doing better for them. But they were still at least going by that unifying rubric, because this was the... Oh my God, I just saw something in here. In Count Duckula 8, you're treated to the inking of a master, Bill Sinkovich. Oh man, I don't know if I still have that because I know I bought that, but some of my issues, some of my like really cheap Star and early like funny animal stuff just got beat to hell, and it was in a pile of comics that got destroyed in a flood, and I didn't give two thoughts to it because I didn't need a bunch of coverless copies of Heathcliff and Count Duckula that were, had been sitting in a moldering basement for 20 years. They got separated from the other comics somehow or other, and I just, like I say, if I bought it when I was 6, is it still in good shape today? I don't know. You answer that question. You ask yourself. Yeah, and I was still buying, I think I quit buying Heathcliff when I was buying more superhero books, but they published now twice a month, and I was still buying Count Duckula, I think, because I liked Count Duckula. I bought Mighty Mouse, too, like long. I was still buying Uncle Scrooge. I never really stopped buying funny animals. They just stopped making them. There isn't an Uncle Scrooge comic being published in this country. As of this recording, there is no company. There are companies with publishing old Uncle Scrooge comics. Fantagraphics is putting all of those back into print. God bless them. There's new Disney comics coming from Dynamite, and every time I go into the comic book store, that shelf is bigger. So someone is buying all the different covers for, Darkwing Duck and the villain origin issues. Someone's buying them. Plus, they even own a comic book company. So between those three entities, you got Fantagraphics, you got Dynamite, you got Marvel. All people who could be publishing an Uncle Scrooge comic. None of them are publishing an Uncle Scrooge comic. Does that make any sense to you? All right, well, oh man, I thought this was an ad for the Striped Chips Ahoy. And then Striped Chips Ahoy, I guess they didn't last long into the 90s, but the Striped Chips Ahoy loomed large when I was a kid. I love those things. They never brought them back, and they were so good. This is, if you want to resent my generation because we had Striped Chips Ahoy, you can go ahead on that. Speaking of which, I'm keeping this issue in chocolate chip mint condition for you. Oh, Alf, chill me. See, Alf in the comics was a mood. And here, I would not have gotten this when I was a kid. I remember, in fact, now that I'm looking over it, I remember being fascinated. Why is there an Alf red and an Alf blue? Well, it's like, okay, now I understand what that is, joking about. And Alf blue lands with the Tanners, and Alf red lands on what kind of looks like as close to the Martians from Mars Attacks as legally permissible. And they look basically like they're doing the same thing, only Martians. Oh, wow, that is literally just like, let's do a few pages of Alf gags as if Alf, this is weird. This is a weird one. See, this was an interesting book. He's like, that is just objectively kind of a bizarre comic book right there. Alf Blue goes, and like I say, when I read this, I was not a big DC person, so I would not have, because this came out in 91, I want to say, or December 90. So, he was published well into like almost 1992 he lasted. That's a good run. That is a good run. Most people are amazed when they find out how many issues Alf lasted. But there's a reason why. It was a great book. I mean, this is well into like the Marvel superhero trading card era, and Alf was still holding on strong. He'd still go for like over a year after that. He was a book that really benefited from the newsstand. They put effort into, fun covers, and the comic was just so much. Oh, wait a minute. There is this Rick Parker. Who was I just talking about? I think on the last video. Rick Parker's cute little, I say cute, they were kind of disgusting, Bullpen Bulletins cartoons. And he apparently does here is a rare Alf story with someone besides Dave Manick, because here's Rusty Howler and Rick Parker apparently doing something. Oh my God, do you see this? There is no way in hell that I would have gotten back in issue 36 of Alf, 1990, I would not have got who these three Jokers are. That's phenomenal right there. From the underground. And oh my goodness, I forgot all about this. Alf did a Mr. Natural parody. Zippy the Pinhead. Keep on trucking. You even get a cuss word in there. Dennis Kitchen. Mutual Omaha? Alf is name dropping Omaha the Cat Dancer. That's actually perfect. Oh my goodness. I had not seen this story in 32 years probably, because I read this maybe once, twice, thrice, but I wouldn't have got that when I was a kid. My God. See, they were publishing in the waning days of the Star Line when they had Alf. Mighty Mouse was a fun book. I bought Mighty Mouse, although I don't think I found every issue. And Count Duckula. I mean, Count Duckula is probably inexcusable at this point, but that was a funny show. And if you don't think so, it's because you haven't seen it. Because it was funny. It was by the people who did Danger Mouse. All right. Well, it took us 12 minutes to get through one issue of Alf here, but there's an ad for your Mighty Mouse. It had Ernie Colin and Marie Severin. Written by Michael Gallagher. He had been doing he's the guy who does Alf. So yeah, like inexplicably, Star Comics had a little bit of heat in the early 90s, right at the very end. I mean, there's that whole run of Muppet Babies that I think Marie Severin did just all the art on. Muppet Babies. Anyway, I just watched a video on YouTube the other day. It came up when I was eating my dinner about Muppet Babies being in a strange legal limbo. So that's probably why Marvel has never reprinted them, considering, they could put that out. They had a good run of Muppet books, again, that's weird to think about. There was just a period in the 2010s where, I think early 2010s, where Marvel just decided, we're going to put out some very, very good Muppet comics. And then they decided to promptly never do so again. They learned their lesson. Roger Langridge. Sounds like the same language. Langridge. Why can't I say that? Hologram cover. Man, I still can't believe Alf did a Mr. Natural parody. Michael James inking. They got someone besides Marie Severin. See what I mean, though? This was a bit of fun was had while making this book, and I don't know what's going on in this story. This does not maybe look like the most. Better yet, write to Tom DeFalco. Oh, wow, and someone wrote in asking how they make comics. So they just devoted, maybe they weren't getting a lot of letters, but since so many people have written to ask how comics are made, we're going to answer that. You've probably noticed lots of people help to make one comic book. If you look at the title page of the first story in a comic book, you'll find some of these people listed in the credits. Most of the people who work on a comic book work in their own homes. Although Marvel's... Okay, I won't read the whole thing, but, it's on the screen now if you want to look at it, but it's just going down about, he writes it... Michael writes a one-page synopsis of the story. He sends the synopsis to his editor who approves it. Then he draws the story, writes the dialogue, and sends it back to the editor. They send them to, maybe, oh yeah, Marie Seven's brought back on this one. Yeah, so it's just all the people involved in making it. That's kind of cool. There's even a little thumbnail to see it up close there. There's a little thumbnail to finished product. Oh. And this is also the kind of stuff they did because they knew their fan base. They knew who was still buying this book. You know, they knew it was probably a few older readers who just liked the sci-fi, humor part of it. And so, you get Alf doing Star Trek jokes for a page. Star Schlep the Next Generation. And there's a Alf Q. There's a... it's maybe not Mad Magazine, but there's your Melmacian Patrick Stewart. Nightmare Beast, if ever there was. Yeah, and there's the hand of the cartoonist is laughing as well with the art on the board. Oh God, they did this monthly bulletins in Aunt May cursive, I guess because someone had that font on their computer. I don't think I made it through. People wrote in to complain about that, I think. If you think people complaining about cursive, and that's not even like really cursive, it's just really small, and people have been complaining about anything that smacks of cursive for forever, because it's awful. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be, but it's not a new complaint. I had to learn it. I'm still, carry that trauma from really getting singled out by the teacher for my cursive being terrible. And they said, you're not going to be able to just print everything. Well, guess what? Guess what? The problem is that I still, instinctively, they made me do it so much, I still write cursive sometimes when I'm not thinking. That's the sick part. All right. What the number 9? Oh, here's a John Byrne cover for Marvel's Mag of Mirth and Mayhem, which was, that just goes to show you. These were the salad days because they could support a humor book. They could also support What If. They were supporting a lot of ancillary titles. Marvel, periodically they make a humor book. In fact, all things considered, they're due for another attempt at a humor book. I don't know if that's going to happen the way the world of comic books looks now, but they've been able to make one, float one periodically. Not Brand Ick has, brand name work from, Kirby and Ditko and anyone who is everyone. And a lot of Marie Severin that people have just never seen because it's like they didn't reprint that stuff for the longest time. Oh, and this is a spoof of Marvel Comics Presents. So you open up your cover and you have your 4-issue table of contents, and it's in the same typeface. And the funny part is that you got Scott Lobdell writing backups, and and he pencils one. Oh my God, we're going to have to look at the Scott Lobdell penciling. We're going to have to see what that looks like. But he usually did at least one story in most issues of Marvel Comics Presents because he was selling a lot to that editor, and then when he was coming up. But Peter David was sometimes also doing the lead. He did a few memorable Wolverine serials. He wrote Sam Keith's first Wolverine story. And he also did a Wolverine story a couple earlier in the run, too. He actually wrote a fair amount of Wolverine, enough they could probably put it in a medium-sized trade. They got Don McGregor to write his own Black Panther spoof. Think about that. That's pretty cool. With this many parts, we can't begin to recap what's gone on before or preface what's going to come in this ongoing, never-ending, downright long tale of the Black and Blue Panther. Yeah, that's funny, because of course it starts off with a Wolverine 8-pager by Peter David and Rourke Tyler. I just said it. So it's just Wolverine being funny for 8 pages, and whoa, you know, there's your early distaff Wolverine. Costume-wise, yeah, they pretty much more or less got it, but I don't think they've done Laura painting her nails. Almost. Not quite. And here's, you know, you got to give it to McGregor for being a good sport. He took it in the shorts, I think, for that, his wordiness, writing this late in the 80s. And he took it in good humor, I see. Although I don't remember him, I don't know what he did after this. And here's, the Scourge. There you go, breakfast is served. What is this? This is a Scott Lobdell and Dave Hoover. Dave Hoover is a name you could count on in your humor books. Marvel put out. He did, I want to say he did a lot of What The stuff. Pretty good. The Obscurity. Oh, this was the Scott Lobdell pencils. Okay, folks, take it all in. The new heroes on the block for the new warriors. You know, the thing is this is, for this type of, you know, fanzine pro work, this is, you know, in the same continuum as my beloved Fred Hembeck and whatever. You know, it's, you could imagine this would have a black and white title where that guy was, I don't know, like meeting different movie stars every issue or something. Weird stuff sold in the black and white market. What can I say? I mean, they had a whole long-running series. Revolutionary Comics put out a lot of rock and roller comics. So they could support more variety of black and white stuff. All right, and what's up next here? How about Warlock and the Infinity Watch #1? Oh man, I love this comic book so much. I read this so many times because this is the aftermath to the Infinity Gauntlet. And indeed, this is where what happens that we all knew was going to happen eventually, which is all the big cosmic entities who we saw during the Infinity Gauntlet sequence. They come together after a little while and they finally decide, like, they're going to go after Adam Warlock, only they know Adam Warlock is going to consent to a trial, which Thanos wouldn't. So that's what they have, and essentially they put, yeah, see, he's starting to lose it. He doesn't want to lose it. If you've ever wondered, because it didn't happen in the pages of the Infinity Gauntlet, how he got rid of the gauntlet when he had it. You see, it starts to go to his head. So they all sort of have a point. They're like, yeah, maybe we should let the Living Tribunal say a few words. So they basically go over his origin, which is what you did, and his history. Here's the Jim Starlin telling the story of what happened in the Roy Thomas run, and then this really fun one. This is Medina, yeah, Angel Medina and Terry Austin. Good combo. They work well together. The Starlin run in one page by as interpreted by Angel Medina. And so you get to, these are my favorites. I love the embodiments of all the cosmic entities would get together and have their confab. And he rules against Adam Warlock, and he says, "Boo! You got to get rid of these. You can't use them anymore. You can be in charge of keeping track of them, but you can't use them together again." Which I guess is, as good a compromise as any. I wish you good fortune with it. Oh, the year, They weren't comic book size, so I couldn't put them in a box. And I want to say that my early Marvel Year in Reviews maybe got trashed a little bit. They should put together a new collection of those. Those are so good. People still talk about those, especially the last couple of years when they were just straight up funny. Oh, and what do we have here? We have a receipt from, oh goodness, Planet Comics. Wait a minute, this may have been in, this may have been in Oklahoma for all I can remember. Starman, Children of the Atom, and an issue of Cerebus. Because I was still buying Cerebus in 2000. There's nothing you can say to me worse than that you know, that admission. Starman. I was still holding on. I wasn't going to give up this late into the run, but man, this is only chapter 2 of this. This Grand Guignol ran for, I think, objectively speaking, way too long. I had just completely lost what it was about by the end of it. And I haven't gone back to the second. I've reread some of the earlier book, but I haven't gone back to the second part because I just... But, you know, even then, you know, he had a supporting cast. The Elongated Man was in it for a while. This Black Condor guy who never really... Seemed like Robinson was trying to push him, but he never really got another shake. I don't think. I may be forgetting he was on Justice League for 5 years. The Female Mist, who was a real piece of work. And she, you know, sort of looks like she stepped out of an issue of Love and Rockets. Very distinctive, you know, visual on that one. This was, you know, it was never a bad-looking comic. Even the second part where Peter Snaberg? I'm probably getting that wrong. Snaberg. Gregory Wright was still coloring. It was never not a handsome-looking book. I just remember like lots of scenes of people sitting around saying, "The curtains part, the drama begins," which in hindsight, like, okay, you know, I would have been nodding out there. And I forgot, Adam Strange was in this. Yeah, like I say, I was still in it to when, oh, they did a Catwoman game? And that looks like, you know, that looks like Phil Jimenez's work. Did he do that? Was that from a cover of the series? Maybe it was. Because he's doing the Balin costume. But I think I tapped out. I read a fair amount of the 90s Catwoman. It was fun in places, but I actually quit before it got good, arguably. All right, we're really not making it through very many tonight. Okay, this is issue 2 of one of the greatest tragedies in Marvel history, and I'm not exaggerating. This had the potential to be in the top tier of all the company's books. It was shaping up to be classic. It was just, you know, it was actually really ahead of its time. Joe Casey more or less just pitched, let's do a retelling, stripped down, continuity light retelling of the origin of the original X-Men. And, you know, in old school terms, I think it was originally intended to be like new continuity. I don't think it ended up sticking. I don't think, although I don't know. But the point is, it was supposed to have been a big deal. And the reason why it was a big deal was because Joe Casey finally in a project worthy of his talents that was going to sell, that was going to stick around. And he had an artist to be beat because they got Steve Rude to do the X-Men. And on paper, it was going to be, I mean, look at it. Look at this. I'm just passing by it because otherwise it breaks your heart that I think there's 3 good issues. They tried to get Paul Smith to fill in on one of them. And Paul Smith does a decent Steve Root. I mean, the fact is there's only a handful of people in the world who they could have got, who could have been anywhere near in that ballpark. But then the last couple issues are kind of rough. But the funny thing is that they're early work by someone who would later go on to be very good. So they're notable for that. And I'm not remembering who, but I'm flashing the name on the screen right at this moment. So yeah, you know, pretty big deal in his own right. Here's, I want to talk about an eventful book. Incredible Hulk number 12 from 2000. Now, interestingly, this is the first 12th issue that the Incredible Hulk ever had, because if you recall, the numbering of the original Hulk series, it was canceled after 6 issues, and he didn't resume his own book until Tales to Astonish. I'm sorry, you know, I'm old, so I can't remember, but I think it was, he got Tales of Astonish, and he just took that numbering over, so we had a 1 through 6, and then he picked up at 100 after Tales to Astonish died, but he never had 6 through 99 or 7 through 99. So this was his first 12th issue. You didn't need to know that, but there you go. But this was the 12th issue of the vaunted reboot from John Byrne and Ron Garney. And I was, even if I had known going in that the reputation that run would have, shall we say, not the best reputation. There's a reason, you know, John Byrne is gone before issue 12, and they brought in Paul Jenkins here, who actually was a really smart choice, because what they needed to do is they needed to stabilize the book in a way that didn't insult the people who were basically really angry over the last year and a half of The Incredible Hulk. Well, 2 years, because there was there was a Joe Casey story wedged at the very end of the first volume of Incredible Hulk, which is definitely very good, worth going back for. It didn't deserve to get sandwiched between the very end of David and Byrne's abbreviated second run, but it's a very good Hulk run. But after the Byrne run, they just needed something to restore credibility. So they went and got someone who knew how to write, because he'd done like 3 or 4 years on Hellblazer. He was British. He wasn't exactly a slouch as a writer. And his Hulk, even if it's maybe sort of remembered more as a transitory period between, you know, different eras of the book, because he was followed by a couple of people who had briefer runs. But ultimately, Jenkins was followed by Greg Pak, who did Planet Hulk, which ended up being, you know, a whole new paradigm of Hulk stories. But, you know, Jenkins, you know, he's here to sort of doing a British version of the Peter David Hulk, shall we say. Very studied, thoughtful in terms of, you know, all of the stuff that Bill Mantlo and Peter David had both done on the book. A course correction, you could say. No, not Planet. I'm forgetting the Bruce Jones, which, you know, I just wrote a rather large article about this, and I forgot Bruce Jones. Planet Hulk was the next time Hulk was big, but the Bruce Jones run was still very popular, even if not, you know, based, you know, they did a movie about it popular. He was the first person to do Hulk explicitly as horror, but the next person to do it really scary like that, you know, the Immortal Hulk, he took a lot from this run. Al Ewing took a lot from the Jenkins run. Just, you know, the main character in it, the main version of the Hulk, rather, the antagonist is the Devil Hulk, who is very important to the, you know, Immortal Hulk storyline. And there's a Hulk with green fangs for you. Revelation of the really demonic-looking Hulk. Oh, that's cool. Well, yeah, I was a big fan, but also direct callback to This is in the Mindscape, but it looks like the, I always forget the name of that place, the Crossroads of World, where he got exiled for a good year, like 1986. And here we're back to the Bruce's mental state, where all the different versions of the Hulk are getting together and having their say. Yep, there's the dude, Devil Hulk. And I think I was enjoying the Jenkins run relatively early, not just because I was happy that Garney was getting better scripts, but I had been a fan of Garney all through the 90s. He was one of my very favorites, and I was still one of my very favorites. I still read anything he does. So here's Thunderbolts 36. I'm assuming from the same period. Yeah, March 2000. So it would have been like December 1999, probably. And this is into the Nicieza run of Thunderbolts, which I almost dropped. When Busiek left, I almost dropped the book. And I remember very consciously, because I was looking for reasons to drop books. I dropped a lot of books. And Thunderbolts was going to be one of them when Busiek left, but I said, I do like these characters, and I've enjoyed this book, so I'll give Busiek the benefit of the doubt, since he's hyping up Nicieza's run, and I'll give it a go. And I gave it one issue, and honestly, it's still one of my favorite single issues of any comic book. Nicieza's first solo run, and I bought the whole run, just like his New Warriors. He knows how to. Oh, hello! You hadn't made yourself felt yet. This episode. Okay, thank you for sitting on the comic book. Are we in your way? But Mark Bagley was still doing the art. He would still do the art for a little bit of Nicieza's run. I think Patch Zurcher took over for him after a little while. Techno had already sort of become a robot man person. So you're just going to sit here and I'm going to prop a comic book up on you like that. And the people are going to be like, I can't see the comic book clearly. They're going to complain. This just goes to show you, I was kind of tuned out at the time. I was barely paying attention because I don't even remember really these Marvel Selects. Maybe because I wasn't paying attention because I already had all the earlier stuff that this new reprint initiative was trying to take care of. Why don't we get you out of here? I already had a lot of that stuff at that point. Because usually, for most reprints, I'm there. I love that. I love that format. But if I already have it, I'm not going to buy it. Much prefer, actually, I've come around to much preferring, if there's a reprint run of something, to getting the trade of it, digging through the back issue bins. Here's a Bullpen Bits, which is essentially a mini Marvels, because there's mini Hawkeye. It was sort of I don't want to say breakout character, because people knew who Hawkeye was, but that version of Hawkeye was the most popular of the mini Marvels. And here's the characters from... Hey, get off your brother. You see what I have to put up with? Anyway, Chris Eliopoulos had an independent book through Image for a while. Desperate Times, I want to say. I bought it. I don't really remember much about it. It was very much a proto-web comic because it was about a couple of dudes sitting around cracking wise with a funny animal, sidekick of some kind. Kind of stuff that's, still kind of popular in certain corners of the internet. Ad for the Joe Kubert School. I love this book. I grew to love these characters, especially Songbird. She's a favorite of mine who no one really seems to want to do anything with Al Ewing. Al Ewing's used her a couple times, but she wasn't even around for the last Thunderbolts go up. You know, she doesn't have to be in the Thunderbolts, but I want to see her somewhere. I love the character. Not just because of the Malin streak, although that's always a plus. Yeah, you know, that's how you write a book like this. You just stack it filled with different plot lines. People going around different things, doing different things, different characters always coming in and out of the shadows. Just, you know, have a destination. Don't just start spinning your wheels without a destination, because people can also tell when you're doing that. Robin 74. You know, I want to say this was probably the last issue of Robin I bought, because this is the first one after No Man's Land. So maybe this even came out before that conclusion, because I want to say I dropped all the Batman books cold after the end of No Man's Land, with the exception of Nightwing. And it's the only time I've ever really bought Nightwing, and it's because I liked Scott McDaniel, what he was doing for the book. And I think I bought it for as long as he did it, even though I have for some reason, like the Dick Grayson appreciation gene must have skipped a generation, because I look at him and I just think, like, he's just not a very interesting character. I liked reading about him when Scott McDaniel was drawing him. You know, Rick Leonardi's done some good Nightwing, because I like Rick Leonardi. I just don't... They weren't even bad comics, but they were just... I just don't know what to do with the guy. Now, I wouldn't just kill him for no reason. Oh, spoiler. She grew to be one of my very favorites. And again, if I hadn't already been really off the Batman books, just, you know, sort of reading, you know, skimming at the shop what they did to her during War Games was so distasteful, that kept me away for an additional amount of time. That's why I love that Batgirls book that they actually just canceled. Still broken up about it. I would have bought that thing forever. Well, who drew that? I'm being rude. Pete Woods, during Chuck Dixon's very long run on the Tim Drake character. And this is Captain America 27. Mark Waid is gone already, but Andy Kubert stuck around. Andy Kubert did a fair amount of Captain America. He drew a good Captain America. The character flattered his strengths. Because, you know, the way Jurgens wrote it it's maybe not anyone's favorite Captain America run, but it's very serviceable. Captain America is a high adventure. You know, in Dan Jurgens, to his credit, his Thor was very good. I think his Thor might be the best thing he's ever written. It's a very, very thoughtful run of Thor, especially the last part. Who's inking in here? Is that Dan Green? Well, there you go. Andy Kubert and Dan Green. That's a nice looking combo. Dan Green gives Andy Kubert's work a little bit more weight than he usually has. That's a good line. It's a nice brush line. Really leaning into the shadows. Very effective. I like that. Another Chris Caruso. Bullpen bits. And, you know, the bullpen bulletin, I'm sorry. If the bullpen bulletin's a CGI, it just doesn't pull your eyes in the same way as when they did the copy-paste. It had a dimensionality on the page. That probably sounds insane. And there's a few of you who know what I'm talking about and agree with me. There's probably at least a few of you. When they stopped having to do the paste-ups, the pages got a little bit more boring because everything is just on a flat digital plane. You don't get the the very slight, depth of the line that you get from paste ups on a board. There's a reason why the old logos used to pop so much, and it's because they would actually cut out and paste as another level of paper on the, so it looks different. It looks like it's, and they're already, not doing it. It's color. I'm just babbling. Don't mind me. Just an old person complaining like, oh, I can tell very minute differences in the tools used to paste up the logo. That's a real matter for the UN, I think. Oh, that's Dan Jurgens pinup for you. I don't even remember this. Up and Away. Da-da-da. Marvel Monopoly. Let's see how we doing. Maybe one or two more. Let's see what we got here. What do we got? Give me something interesting. Oh, here we go. Blue Devil. Oh, and I can't tell what number it is. It's Blue Devil 27. Now, this is a book that every time I got into a DC book, it seemed like it would go away. Or not just a DC book. Anytime I got into a superhero book when I was this age, I liked Power Pack. I really got into Power Pack 3 issues before it became direct market. And when you're 5 and you live in the middle of nowhere, you're not going to understand what the direct market is. In hindsight, if I'd have thought, if I'd been able to understand the ads in the comics, I maybe could have asked my parents to take me to a comic book store, but I was young enough that telling me, oh, we're taking this to a different type of store might as well have been telling me that it was going to Mars. So that was Power Pack, and I read Outsiders right before Outsiders ended, and Blue Devil right before Blue Devil ended. I remember they did a double-sized issue with Flash's Rogues that I quite loved when I was like 6. My first exposure to those characters, actually. And this is keeping with, Blue Devil's whole deal is that he works in movies. So a lot of what he fights are characters associated or in some way derivative of the entertainment industry. So you got a evil goose jumps out of well, not evil, just looks like it's a cartoon goose who has cartoon goose powers in a real people world. And he starts, oh, and there's another woman with a Malin streak. What was I just saying? Once you start to look for it, you see it everywhere. Heroes role-playing. This is fun. Everyone's turning into a cartoon because this cartoon character is corrupting reality. Blue Devil was a fun character, so of course he was never able to support a book again after this. I remember being absolutely flabbergasted by Hawkman ads when I was a kid, because I saw a few of them in the DC books I was buying at the time. I didn't know who Hawkman was. He just looked so unhappy. Didn't make me want to read to see what he was doing. First run of Secret Origins. That is a dynamite book. They got good people for just about every issue. Like this, Marshall Rogers with Roy Thomas and Terry Austin, along with Mike Barr and Dick Giordano for Halo, everyone's favorite. And wow, back when a book like Blue Devil could support like a thick letters page. This is all one letter, though, from a guy who looks like a guy named David Pullyblank. A TM Maple. 3 pages of letters. Man, 3 pages of letters. And some of them are even just like, call-outs. or answers, not calling them answers. My goodness, that was a different era, a different world, my friends, a different world. And XFactor 102 from May 94. Was this during the... See, I remember really not enjoying the book and just like kind of resenting the fact that it was so tied into the other X books at this time, because I wasn't enjoying it. It wasn't enjoyable for, I'm just going to say, long stretches of time, and any more will incriminate myself. At the time, it was only $1.50 a month mistake. And that was, you know, you could have a few of those if it meant keeping up on, you know, a line of books that you liked. Back when comic books were a different value proposition. Nowadays, I'm not going to be buying a side title that I only kind of like. You know, at $4 a pop, it's slightly different. No, it's a... You know, we're going high concept with the Captain Crunch ads, I see. Dawn was on one. This was... Yeah, the thing is, I want to go back and read it because it's J.M. DeMatteis. And he never really did any X-Men. This run on XFactor is his... He did a couple small projects. He did the first Iceman series, but he never did a longer run than this run on XFactor. So I kind of want to go back to see it now. It's got Jan Gersema with Al Milgrom. Gersema is underrated. Someone I've been thinking I want to go back and know more about because she did a lot of work. She did a lot of work for like the X-Men books at this period. So, you know, she was very competent. You can definitely tell she was a Kubert School grad, because even though she's kind of aping a little bit of Larry Stroman there. Which makes sense, because he was the guy who really made an impact on this book. Brief run, but an impactful run. And Joe Quesada did a little bit. Yeah, so it's not a bad-looking book. There's Random, who was a one-joke character that I don't think anyone really got, is the thing. They were doing these cardboard, which made it very difficult to keep the comic, you know, sort of in good shape, because the spine would be flopping around with this on it. But they were doing inserts, because this is for the... Yeah, I want to say the first Spider-Man Marvel Masterprint set that was all Mark Bagley, back when he was the #1 Spider guy, so I don't know how he did that. A lot of no-dos, no doubt. I don't know how Jim Lee did the first X-Men series either. The Hildebrand brothers, when they did their card series, they weren't holding down a monthly book at the time. So I don't know how Mark Bagley found time to do a whole card set. This isn't a bad-looking comic for a lot of what I was buying at the time. I can see how I, you know, maybe kept this one going. It was, you know, it reads fine. You can tell what's going on. There's a plot. Probably better, you know, because I remember a couple things about, like I remember Jamie Madrox's death being kind of an intense sequence. Maybe it's not completely without. Oh, and he brought back Malice. Claremont idea that didn't really get that much play. Some of Claremont's ideas from the later part of his X-Men are darn near, you know, forgotten. Not everything has been strip mined. You never see Hardcase and the Harriers. And how about, let's finish off with Simpsons Comics 34. I was still buying, I think this is right about when I maybe started to ease away from Bongo, except for, you know, like Radioactive Man and the Treehouse of Horror books, clearly. But the regular Simpsons books, the problem is that they were really consistent. You know, they had moved on from when they were, like the first couple of years, Bill Morrison was doing just about everything. And he did a better Matt Groening than Matt Groening can do. But he wasn't doing... I don't even know if he was still doing the covers at this point. No, because this is by the interior artist, Stephanie Gladden. And it was very consistent. Every issue was pretty much funny stuff. I don't know who Rob Hammersley is, but there's nothing. This looks very much in line with what you'd expect from a Simpsons book, and I enjoyed it, I think. But it was just like, you know, maybe I've just had my fill of Simpsons comic books. I got the Bill Morrison stuff. But I dip back in when other creators would join in. Like I bought issue 50 because that was the first comics work by Ms. Gail Simone, and you better believe that I ordered that one just so I knew I'd have a copy, because I'm sure it was going to sell out, because the woman who did You'll All Be Sorry was writing a story in it. I guess you could say that had an influence on me. Roswell, that was one of the few non-Simpsons books, and that was Bill Morrison's big push. So this is an ad for the... And this has, oh man, this has not encomiums. It has blurbs from Chuck Dixon, Jeff Smith, Evan Dorkin, Mike Allred, forward from Mark Schultz. Yeah. And I don't think it did very well. So, books like this at this time, well, for a significant time, actually, weren't doing that well. But they always had, fan art and fan art. That's fun. Someone did this little Homer with milk and cheese. Maybe was Evan Dorkin writing for Bongo at the time? I'm just trying to explain that. What is there any context for that? And they usually had something. They usually did have something more fun than the lead story, because it'd be a spoof of some kind, like the Simpsons Supporters Suggestion Spin Cycle. Oh, so this is like, I guess, fake. I don't get this. Oh, so it's complaint letters, and then they do like a Krusty Cakes ad or a Dr. Seuss spoof. I guess I kind of get it. Cyber Swine. Yeah, they sort of, I guess Cyberforce is running out of steam. All right, well, I think that's probably a good length for an episode. I recorded 2 in one sitting here, so I should probably quit before my voice gets shredded. But here we go. Sorted.